Okay, so today's aspect then, the one that lots of people are talking about, and in quite unfavorable terms, I have to say. I mean, everything has a positive and a negative. Everything has a real good aspect to it and also a slightly less desirable aspect to it. And Mars and Uranus in their conjunction today, I think I've seen really garnering a lot of emergency messages. It is quite a decisive force. There's a lot of energy captured within Mars and Uranus. Now, it comes together in this conjunction today. And what I really wanted to bring about in this video is the idea that it could also be used in a beneficial way. This is feel-good astrology after all. How can you use and garner the energy of Mars and Uranus and make it work for you? What does it entail even? So in this shorter video than usual, what I'm going to do is explore the Mars and Uranus cycle. So it's not just the conjunction, which is happening exactly today, but to be fair, we've actually been in it for a good week, and we will still be in it for, a little while longer. But see this conjunction as the start of a new cycle, a cycle that is imprinted with essence of Mars and essence of Uranus in the form of a conjunction. And then to think, well, what does this new cycle represent and how can I use it? Because this cycle goes on for the whole duration of this particular conjunction. It is setting a seed point. It's sowing a seed. So in this video, I'm going to look at the energies of these two together, what they might be seeding in you for your life, possibly in the world. And I think we're hearing a lot about that. And then how you can use it. I will also be looking at how these seed points come around. How often does this conjunction come around? Is there a pattern to it that we can also use to our advantage? And then at the end, I'm going to do a really short, but hopefully quite helpful little idea, a little reading, a mini forecast that could really help you use these energies in a useful way, so that you're leveraging the energies of Mars and Uranus in a way that's going to help you rise up. And I say that really, really purposefully. Mars is very much about fortitude. Uranus is also about surprises and shocks, but also change and innovation. So how can we make these work for us? Before I get going, I just want to, as usual, say a big thank you to everybody who sponsors this particular channel, who sponsors my shows. I really can't do this without you. I could, but you've made it so much easier for me. You've shown me that what I do has some value to you, and that means a lot to me. And I really see that as a big responsibility. And hence it makes me think, wow, I could do something on this. I could do something on this aspect. And I really feel like hauling my backside out of bed and recording something for you. So thank you so very much. I really appreciate you. So when you want to have a look at the planetary cycles, I got these from astro-seek.com. You can set them for a particular time span that you're looking for. This basically shows one whole complete cycle from when that particular planet went into the sign of Aries, 0 degrees Aries, and then its journey right the way through until it went through to Aries again. This isn't actually the current cycle. The current cycle started in May 2024 when Mars went into Aries. But one thing you'll notice about these Mars cycles is, Mars has one really big retrograde. And when he goes retrograde, he spends a long time in a particular sign relative to his other visits in other signs of the zodiac. So, he is approximately in each sign, give or take 1 month, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And then he spends quite a bit of time in the sign of Gemini. This time round, he's spending a lot of time in the sign of Leo. He will be going retrograde in the sign of Leo later on this year. So you can see there is this quite an interesting pattern with the retrogrades. Now with Uranus has got an 83.9 year cycle. And so the last time Uranus went into the sign of Aries was in 2010, and he's going to be there until 2094. So it's a really, really, really long cycle. Now, given that Mars is taking approximately 2 years or just under to go right the way through from one sign of, like, from the start of Aries right the way through the zodiac, Mars is going to do a few loops while Uranus is in one sign of the zodiac, and you'll see that in just a second. So here I've actually brought up a list of all the conjunctions in recent times since 2000, every time Mars has had a conjunction with Uranus, and you'll see it depicted out here. So in 2001, Uranus was still in the sign of Aquarius. And so when Mars came into the sign of Aquarius, it formed that conjunction. Then Uranus went into the sign of Pisces. And again, he was there for, I can tell you, he was there for 7.8 years. And during that time, Mars made 4 conjunctions. So each time he does his approximately 2-year loop, there's 4 of these conjunctions. Then we had 5 of these conjunctions in the sign of Aries. And now we are actually in a Taurus loop. So you can see that approximately, the average is that you would have a Mars and Uranus conjunction 4 times in each sign, but that might vary, according to, Mars's retrograde pattern, and also Uranus's retrograde pattern. So they are coming into these conjunctions every couple of years, and you'll see that they're in a set. You could say right now we're in a Taurus set. In fact, we've had one Taurus Mars and Uranus conjunction in 2021, then we had one in 2022, and now today we've got it in 2024. The next time these two come together, it will be in the sign of Gemini in 2026. So, what we might consider is, what is the energy of Mars and Uranus? Like, how do they both impact us, or like you and I and, and your friends and family? You might think, okay, how have these conjunctions affected me? And then you might see that they're always taking place, for a good 7 or 8 years in a particular part of your chart. So right now I've got Scorpio. I always have Scorpio ascendant, but right now these conjunctions are in my 7th, could even maybe be in my 6th house. In fact, the first one was in my 6th house before they went into the 7th. Yours might be taking place in another part of your chart, so that will also impact how these energies are being used, that where their potential is sitting. So what we might think and consider is, what do these energies bring about? Mars, one of Mars's themes is survival. Mars is seen as a very yang, a very sort of masculine, a very sort of ultimately yangy, forward moving, it's emitting energy, as opposed to Venus, which is receiving energy, very much like the sun and the moon. One is kind of pushing out and one is being a lot more receptive, which is very much like the yin yang. So Mars is the yang, it's the masculine sort of energy. Mars is also the god of war, so he has this idea of defensiveness. He stands strong, he makes a case for himself. Mars draws boundaries. I mean, if you think about wars, they're usually over boundaries. They've got something to do with some kind of wall that is protecting people or keeping people out. Entirely how, it's up to how you see it, and what walls mean to you. But Mars is essentially, there's an element of self-interest in a way that Venus doesn't obviously come across as self-interested. The first thing that comes across about Venus is she's accommodating, whereas Mars is like, this is what I want right now, so there's this element of now as well. Now Uranus is the god of the heavens. He's father sky, and in mythology, he is I think of Uranus as consciousness. So there is a sort of element of consciousness. If you think about technology, like we've got our consciousness, our human consciousness, or a spiritual consciousness. We could say every living being has a consciousness. And I always think that Uranus shows us where we're channeling consciousness. But if you think of the sort of technological age that we live in, I think the internet and that sort of invisible force and frequencies are like a different kind of consciousness. Obviously, it's not a living, breathing, spiritual consciousness that we might love and know, but it's almost like we have a man-made consciousness, this man-made idea, this the Internet of Things would really fall under the idea of Uranus. And Uranus really does show us innovation. You know, if you think of air and sky and consciousness, and, you know, you can move anywhere within it. You know, there are no boundaries. There are just basically open spaces and freedom and possibilities. Now, Uranus, if you think of consciousness, it can suddenly hit you just like that, you know, so there can be these massive changes that happen. So I think Uranus is also a bit like an earthquake or a tsunami or a whirlwind of ideas, a tornado. It's something that suddenly arises in your life and possibly changes it, you know. So the element of change and synchronicity and surprise are all absolutely ascribed to Uranus, as well as technology, which I always think is, you know, a very much manifested form of innovation. You know, Uranus is about innovation. You can't have innovation if you're not going to change. It's inventive. It's inventing tools for humans. So yeah, there's some really exciting possibilities with Uranus, but obviously, you know, the sudden accidental change, the things that come out of the sky. You know, I did speak about Mars and Uranus in respect of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump and how prominent that was in his chart, like literally at the top of his chart. And that particular video was really pulling on the very strong aggression that you might see with Mars, and the in the sky something coming, like literally a bullet coming through the sky. Interestingly, this particular conjunction is also in a conjunction with the fixed star Algol, which is, I think, the third eye in Medusa's head. So there's this idea of hitting like a bullseye right in the center of the head. And the whole idea of Medusa, you know, it's kind of murderous, but also quite magical and mythical as well. So, you know, that side of Mars and Uranus, that surprise, and the fact that it's connected right now with this fixed star that has such a terrible reputation, you know, I think that's why there are so many foreboding messages about, you know, the energy of this. You know, it could be used to manifest something really, truly dastardly. You know, like drone attacks, for instance. And, you know, I was actually looking back through 2021 and 2022. And I noted, I can't remember which one it was, but I think it was 2021. A big drone attack happened and took people out. That's a euphemism. I mean, it killed people. Let's say, you know, let's be honest with what a drone attack does. You know, it kills people. So there could be this Mars and Uranus energy where sort of there is an aggression from the sky, which would really, you know, which would really fit the two themes. But you could also have this very direct inspiration come. You know, you could have this new idea about your survival, new idea that helps you move forwards. And I think that's an entirely more positive take on this energy. Now, it's also in the sign of Taurus, so there are themes of resources, wealth, security, survival. You know, Taurus, you know, it's the second sign of the zodiac, and the second sign, or if you think about the second house and what that represents, it's our earnings, it's our resources, and I also think a healthy dose of self-esteem, like how do we feel about ourselves and how can we boost ourselves back up? And I think the sign of Taurus is absolutely about comfort and to feel good and to feel like we have all our needs met. I think it's, I think, you know, the sign of Taurus is actually quite magnificent. And so having Mars and Uranus here could have brought about lots of innovations and lots of changes. Interestingly, It was the one in 2021. That was actually on the inauguration day of Biden, and on that particular day, I think he put into place 15 different executive. I can't remember what they're called. 15 amendments or something. Or what are they? He signed executive orders. There you go. I've got my notes written down, and in that. He rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement, or the Accord, as some people call it. He halted the construction of the southern border. Again, it's about a wall, which is interesting. You know, Mars is about our defenses and what we might consider as a boundary. So he created a change to do with a boundary. So it's Mars and Uranus, like change is the Uranus. He also stopped the XL pipeline. So again, there's something, you know, a stoppage in the infrastructure that could bring about safety, but for ecological reasons as well, which again is another Taurus theme. You know, Taurus is also the environment. You know, Taurus is absolutely about nature and the outdoors. So it covers so many different possibilities. But isn't it interesting that on the day of the inauguration, let me just double check. Hang on one sec. Yeah, I just wanted to double check that I was in the right year then. I just had this moment where I almost had a brain fart and I thought, oh my God, did I get it all right? Yeah, just checking on onthisday.com for January the 20th, 2021. Joe was inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States of America. He signed 15 executive orders on his first day in office, including rejoining the WHO, affirming the Paris Climate Agreement, revoking the Keystone XL pipeline, mandating masks on federal properties. That's interesting because, again, masks is another form of a barrier. And if you think Mars is about our survival and how we can thrive, that's also you know, something. And halting construction of the southern border wall. Again, it's a boundary and it's construction. Again, that's Mars. You know, you're putting something together. Fascinating. So, you know, there are these big events that are taking place around the time of Mars and Uranus in their life cycle. So, you know, given that there are these ideas to do with survival, to do with thrival, to do with our wealth and our security and how we handle it, maybe, you know, politically, one party might be looking at your more immediate wealth and one might be looking at the wealth of future generations, maybe in terms of environmental ideas, as some people have laid out. You know, you can see the issues. The way people are thinking about things are similar. You know, it's about wealth and survival and creating change and being constructive, but it may well be operated and executed in a different way. It's also very innovative, and inventions and new things and technology come out, in particular stuff for survival. And I note that obviously in 2021, one of the things that was really rolled out was a new set of vaccines based on a new kind of technology. So there's, you know, these new ideas that are kind of rolled out. It's that innovation that Uranus comes up with. And then Mars, it was done in quite a forceful way. You know, there were these ideas of mandating and putting a lot of pressure on people to make essentially what lots of people think is actually a personal decision. But of course, you know, now there's a huge split, I think, in the way humanity thinks about the idea of, you know, do we have sovereignty? Do we put ourselves first or do we put the society first? Very interesting question, which I'm actually speaking about in a video I'm releasing tomorrow, which is about the Jupiter and Saturn square, which is also taking place right now. Or it's coming into the square right now. So we've had a couple of these Mars and Uranus conjunctions in the sign of Taurus, which, like I said, is about us trying to experience a greater sense of survival, trying to experience a greater sense of comfort, maybe taking action about comfort, and maybe trying to be innovative about how we're doing it. And so what I like, one of the reasons I'm doing this is to try and get you to realize or think about What have you been doing since January 2021? What were you considering or starting in August of 2022? And where were these conjunctions in your chart? Because it will be showing you a bit of a picture, like your own story of innovation and where you're putting a lot of innovative energy. You know, where are you putting change energy into in your life right now? So this is a random chart. It's not like a chart of anyone famous or anything like that. But this is the chart of somebody that I know. And this is, I've used a Placidus system. You know, I also do use equal or whole sign charting as well. So for instance, this is what this person's chart looks like with a whole sign layout. So you'll see that you have one sign per house. So that's the entirety of Leo, that's the entirety of Virgo, Libra, all the way through. And then this first one is if you are using a chart system called Placidus, which a lot of people use. I tend to prefer that myself. So, you know, what I would advise you do, if you know how to draw up your own chart, is to draw it up. I think astro.com is a really, really great place, you know, to go. It's free. You can draw up your chart in so many different ways. It's very, very intuitive to use, very easy to use, and you can make up your own mind. But what you want to be looking at is, you know, the first one happened at 6 degrees in the sign of Taurus. You might consider, have I got something at 6 degrees in the sign of Taurus? Which house did this fall in my chart? The second one happened on the 1st of August 2022 at 18 degrees in the sign of Taurus. Interestingly, in this person's chart, that would have been right over their Jupiter. So I would imagine that that would have been very innovative for them and create quite a big shift, in fact, quite a big rush, quite possibly an upward rise of their energy, especially seeing it's in the 11th house. And I know this person is particularly collaborative. And then 2024, where we are right now, it's at 26 degrees in the sign of Taurus, which is right over their Mercury. So this could be absolutely a time when they start to communicate more. Again, it's in the 11th house, so social media will be a lot more important to them. Marketing, reaching out there. I know they've got quite a fantastic profile, so I'm sure they're already doing that. And then just being mindful that the next one that comes along is in 2026 in the sign of Gemini, and it's taking them, if they're using the Placidus system, it's going to ignite their 12th house. You know, it's really showing up, highlighting something in their 12th house. So, you know, if I was in your shoes right now, I would be putting these dates or these degrees over my chart to see what is lit up. Have I got any planets that have been involved? And if you have, like, for instance, you know, this first one at 6 degrees was so very close to their Chiron, and in a very kind of tight opposition to their natal Uranus, you know, so this person's obviously in their late 40s now, but they would have been in their early 40s around that time. You know, that is a really, really strong energy to have. So it's really worth having a look at where they've been. And if around that time you had one of these Mars and Uranus conjunctions, and you can see that it created an energy, then you've got an idea of what you might be picking up with this time round and running with. You know, I think this fits in perfectly for people who are innovative naturally, you know, people that maybe work for themselves, or people that want to work for themselves, people that move around a lot, people that are interested in working on a contractual basis as opposed to working on a monthly salaried, you know, purpose. You know, people that maybe are really quite happy to take charge in their life will find this energy quite energizing, you know, quite I would say enriching. So yeah, have a look and see where it falls in your chart. Now, there's something else I want to share with you as well, and that is that this whole life cycle, it's not just about the seed point, like this moment where something is being birthed, you know. So we could just say, this starts in 2024. It starts on July the 15th, 2024. And then the next time it comes around, it's in 2026 on July the 4th. But in actual fact, this pairing of planets is going to change. It has a life cycle. It is a hero's journey. So as Mars speeds up and away from Uranus, the first thing that's going to happen, from this particular seed point, is that they're going to go into a sextile, and it's going to be in a sextile for quite some time. It's doing that 3 times, and that's really because of the retrograde activity that is going to be happening. We've also got in 2025, we've got a square. So Uranus and Mars will go into a square in 2025. June 15th, 2025 is quite a big time. It's actually interesting because I really recognize these dates, because today, on July the 15th, 2024, Saturn and Jupiter are in orb of a square. And then the very last of their squares, there are going to be 3 Saturn and Jupiter squares. The last of their squares is taking place on June the 15th, 2025, just as, Mars and Uranus are in a square. So it almost, the way I see it, and this is probably why I'm releasing this video today, and then the Jupiter and Saturn one tomorrow, what really occurs to me is whatever you're starting today, and you can observe this life cycle of the Mars and Uranus. You can observe the project as you're going through it. You've also got Saturn and Jupiter helping you. They're creating a bit of a crisis point. They are creating a bit of an impetus to create a good seed point here. There is pressure. Jupiter and Saturn in a square are always bringing up a sense of pressure. Maybe there's this sense that you need to run off and do more things, and yet at the same time you're dog tired. So there is definitely a need for innovation right now, which is absolutely bringing out this dreamer side. This kind of crazy, innovative, I'm going to go off into the wilderness and sort this out kind of thing. This is a real sort of questing energy with Mars and Uranus today. So anyway, it has a life cycle of different types of energies, and it's always worth paying attention to the trine as it comes up, because when it comes into this trine energy, things start to speed up. So whatever seed point has been created today, or that you are really creating as an idea today, and it's funny that I'm talking about this, I didn't even realize I've got some big plans I'm working on right now which completely fits into this pattern. But whatever you're working on around August 2025, they're going to be in a trine energy. So if you haven't already launched it, this could be a really good time to launch what you've created under this Mars and Uranus energy. If it's more of a long-term project, you could launch it in 2026 during the second of these trines, or you might even wait to release it at the following seed point, just under 2 years' time. So, it's fascinating that you can look through these times. Now, the opposition in particular is a time when you really do need to pay attention, as are the squares, because the energy of Mars and Uranus are really, really jarring. The opposition in particular is very, very strong. And Mars in the sign of Sagittarius is also very idealistic and absolutely wants to go to war on anything that is not idealistic. Mars absolutely in the sign of Sagittarius. That's where I've got my Mars. In fact, it's quite campaigning. It really wants things to be fair and to be right. And so, if you're creating an idea right now in July 2024, and your project or your idea is still in development, you may well want to think about how you are going to deal with things if they don't go fairly, if they don't work in a way that just feels like it's for the good of everyone. So that's likely to raise a whole heap of discussion points, and it takes you right the way back to the beginning and a new seed point. So this is an innovative cycle of development and movement. So these seed points, these are where you are developing ideas and almost releasing the consciousness of them, like thinking, okay, I know I'm going to commit to this now. I'm going to put this seed in the ground, cover it over, and I'll I'll water it a little bit, you know. And then you've got the sort of sextile energy. You know, the first sextile is where you're really starting to feed it with some more water, a bit more ingenuity. The second sextile, just before it goes into its conjunction, you might already be working on developing your new idea. You know, you might be softly appreciating all the success that you've had so far. The trines are also very inspiring, you know, so these are other times when you can be reinvesting in your ideas and your creativity. The squares and oppositions, like I say, you really want to pay attention to. So what does this particular seed point have? So I've already mentioned that it's in a conjunction with, you know, Medusa's head Algol, the fixed star, which is, you know, seen as quite malefic. There are some people that talk about it actually being deeply feminine, absolutely about the feminine magic, the power of femininity. You know, this almost that we're able to put people under a spell. So there is some of that. There's obviously a lot to do with hair, a lot to do with heads, and maybe our third eye as well. We could be really taking action on our consciousness. You know, if you think Uranus is about consciousness and Mars is about us taking action. The Uranus and Mars conjunction is also in a trine to Pluto. So whatever idea you're birthing right now, it's really supported by Pluto, you know. And if your idea is the kind of idea that is going to stretch you, which is obviously what Pluto wants you to do. You know, Pluto is wanting you to learn about yourself. Pluto is wanting you to really grow. Pluto is wanting you to get power, but not by grabbing it. You know, Pluto is wanting you to learn about power because you're pushing yourself in so many new directions or in a particular way, and it won't be easy. You know, Pluto does kind of take you to the edge of your limits. And yet Pluto can really rise you up. You know, when you've confronted Pluto, it's really helpful. So there's a lot going on here. And funnily enough, in tomorrow's video that I'm releasing, you know, with the Saturn and Jupiter square, as they are going into their square right now, their seed point, i.e. the last time they came together, which was just, it was December 2020, the 21st of December 2020, they came together at 0 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. And, you know, if we like Pluto right now is at 1 degree, he's going retrograde right back to the seed point of Saturn and Jupiter. So there are some very, very big ideas. This idea you're developing right now might have something to do with what you were really working on back in 2020, Christmas 2020. And actually the month later was when these guys came together. So I really see that the Saturn and Jupiter energy and this Mars and Uranus energy are absolutely working hand in hand. You know, there is something very, very big and powerful going on. Now, obviously, we're seeing very big, powerful shakeups going on right now. Big things facing humanity. Could be truly shocking, could be truly exciting, according to how you feel right now in terms of what your viewpoint is, what your political, spiritual, religious viewpoint is, your philosophical one. You know, these are really big shifts we're all going through right now. And, you know, when you think about how big it appears out there, what that really says to me is, well, that stuff out there is happening because big stuff's happening to us too. You know, it's not all just happening out here. There is a call for us to become greater or to be more in our power, to explore our power. You know, we may well have given up our power years ago. You know, we might have just decided, oh, this is how it is. We just get a job. We just do this for the rest of our lives. You know, our lives might have a lot more purpose than all of that. They might not, but, you know, I really think this is calling us to be a stronger version of ourselves. And, you know, as such, Uranus and Mars in their conjunction are also in a sextile to Saturn. So Saturn, so you've got Pluto giving it strength, you've got Saturn strengthening it as well. You've got the resolve to really get something done that's really quite useful. Now, there is a square to Mercury. So these ideas could be quite jarring. You might not know how to talk about them. In fact, they might even come about because of some very jarring conversation that you're having. You might be coming up against people or noticing that there's a lot of talk, and you're feeling triggered. There might be all these different things going on right now, and it might be in the discomfort of it that you're coming up with ideas, that these new ideas are being birthed. And then also, we have also got this Pluto in opposition to Venus and the Sun taking place right now. Just a couple of days ago, Pluto and Venus were exact in their opposition, and coming up, the Sun is going to be in an exact opposition. What this is saying to me, we've also had recently Mercury in opposition to Pluto as well. What this is saying to me is, on a personal level, we're all really quite confronted right now by world power and the strength of world power in our lives. How it's taken over our mind, how it's taken over in many respects, how we talk about things, and how much of your day now is spent with you doing what you want to do, considering your goals, and how much of it is it taken up by everything else, like the world impinging in your mind. It's almost like, because we're connected to these phones and TVs and internet and stuff, that we've got this like open door in our head, and it's all just being crammed in, and like we don't have the choice. Of course we do have the choice, but it's like we're being opened up, and this big old world is just feeding right into our unconscious minds right now. And Venus, this is our feelings, our really open hearts. The nature of being a human being right now is absolutely being really affected by these big outer forces. And of course, then we've got, our personal will coming up. So there is a lot going on right now astrologically. So I do think these seed points, whatever seed points are coming up that you'll be creating with, will be really, really powerful. So, please don't see this Uranus-Mars conjunction as something, I think I did say in all the July forecasts, this is a very strong moment in the month, and this could be a month where you might want to be a bit more careful in terms of being accidental, driving, going anywhere if your instincts are saying, stay away. I've heard from people who want to stay behind or go into hibernation. And, if your chart, if this is going off in a very sensitive part of your chart, you might be quite well advised to do that. But even so, don't let this energy of Mars and Uranus, which can generate lots of ideas and possibilities and a feeling of deep survival and a feeling that actually your life is in your hands, and actually you can change your life if you want to. You don't have to feel so passive or victimized. This energy, this Uranus and Mars energy, could actually take you out of a place of feeling helpless. This actually could be a very empowering, motivating conjunction. So I did a show very recently with Linda Hill, who wrote her Sabian Symbols Oracle, which has got 360 degrees of wisdom. And each particular degree of the zodiac relates to a different one of her cards. Now, all of her cards are freely available to, you can, like this piece of advice, you can see on her website, and her website is www.sabiansymbols.com. And so I wanted to look up what 26 degrees 19 in the sign of Taurus, what is the message for it? And with Sabian symbols, you always round them up to the next number. So, her Sabian symbol is 27 Taurus, and it's called An Old Indian Woman Selling Beads and Trinkets. Now, that might not sound like a big clue, but when we deep dive, you'll see that there's a lot to do with innovation here. So this symbol indicates having talents and skills and crafts that reflect one's culture and abilities. Don't underestimate yourself and do only what you think others believe you're capable of. These very limitations are telling you of hidden talents and skills that you probably just take for granted. There is something very worthwhile on offer here. Don't wait for passers-by to stop and pay attention. Others may think you're more talented and special than you realize. Get out and show your talents and abilities. So there's a very, very strong message here. You know, this energy could be used, you know, if you're having an idea right now, or a thought, like a thought that keeps coming up, maybe in different ways. You know, your unconscious mind will give you several prompts if something important is coming up. And if you've got a sense that there is more to you, and maybe that you're underestimating your own abilities, if you've got this really big dream, this will be a fantastic time to give it a go. A really good time to give it a go. So what I'm going to do now is go into each of the signs on a sign by sign basis, like I do with each ascendant. This is based on a whole sign charting. Obviously, if you've got a Placidus chart, you might want to consider which of these readings is right for you. But what I'm doing is sort of showing you where the first and the second and the third of these Taurian conjunctions occurred within your chart, and where they're heading, you know, like where the next one of these ideas is taking you. And this reading is really to help you understand how you're developing your talents and skills, how you're underestimating yourself, and how you can believe in your ingenuity. So if you're interested in that, then please do see each of the sections. They're all labeled out there in their chapters. So there you go. I hope you found that helpful. And like I say, if you do want your forecast, then stick around and listen in. Okay, so for Aries ascendant, then this particular innovative conjunction between Mars and Uranus has been playing out in your second house for, well, for quite some time, for the last 3 years, since it started in January of 2021. So this particular set of Mars and Uranus conjunctions, you should have seen that you've been doggedly working towards feeling a lot more secure in yourself, in particular with your earnings, in particular with your ability to free yourself up with work. Like, have you managed to get more control over your earnings? Have your earnings become slightly more sporadic, slightly more exciting, slightly more innovated? You know, Mars and Uranus going through this second house could create some very strong needs to feel secure in your self-esteem. And I'm sure it's not been without a certain amount of shock and a certain amount of a need for change, a really strong need for change. In fact, having Uranus going through this part of the chart usually does precipitate a feeling of, I need a lot more control over my earnings. I need a lot more control because it actually hurts. I actually don't feel so confident in myself. So this is a very, very strong conjunction to go through. Now, I don't know what particular changes you would have considered around the time of January 21 or August 2022. Maybe you can cast your mind back and work out there. But what I would say is, how have you developed your talents and skills during this time? How have you underestimated yourself? And what risks have you taken to kind of put it right? What risks have you taken to be able to develop yourself in a new way, to create more security for yourself, to create more comfort for yourself? How have you been able to do that using this energy? And what did you learn? You know, like where you did take risks, were they too risky? Did you overdo it? Did you underdo it? You know, this is a lot of information. Like the next time this comes around in 2026, it's really moving you into your third house, which is innovation within your community. It is about how people are seeing you a lot. You know, it's a lot more about how other people are experiencing you and how you are experiencing other people outside of your, outside of your immediate environment. To me, this is about you getting the opportunity to raise your self-esteem significantly enough so that the next time this comes around, your ideas can be really quite beautifully used within your community, so that you can maybe add something to your community in a way that is bringing you even more kudos, but also actually helping your local community, actually helping people. You know, it might even have something to do with education and schools, which is very much a third house aspect. So yeah, I wonder, like, what has changed about your work? Uranus going through this often does bring up some deep shocks about, our ability to earn, and possibly takes a bit of a downturn. It doesn't necessarily give you a smooth path when Uranus is going through this particular part of your chart. But Mars coming through this usually gives us an element of resolve. It usually gives us the impetus to take a risk, the impetus to go for a job application, to put yourself out there for a promotion, to start designing something that you can offer, to start thinking in terms of your actual services, like what is your unique selling point. So there's a lot that you're changing. There's a lot that you could be innovating, in particular things like different forms of earnings. So lots of people now have a crypto portfolio, like they might be earning in different ways, and so you might be a lot more creative in terms of your resources. So it might not be that you're looking to earn more money necessarily, but that you've got a better access of resources. Have you got an idea that you could be developing right now, but that could go into your local community about how you're sharing resources, or how there is a new economy that you're involved in setting up, or that that means something and helps to actually raise everyone's self-esteem. There's a lot going on here about your self-esteem. There's a lot going on here about feeling better in yourself, because obviously when we feel better in ourselves, we're actually able to receive a lot more from others, because we believe in ourselves and we are raising our deservability. So again, I would say that these are also aspects of this particular moment in time. Suffice to say, whatever you're being ingenious about, wherever you are feeling elevated, enlightened and surprised and delighted, these are all giving you a clue as to where there might be a way to step forward. So I hope that's helpful for you. So Taurus ascendant then. So the thing that really occurs to me is you've had Uranus going through your first house for a really long time. And obviously the first time you had one of these conjunctions with Mars, it would have been really early on in your first house, very close to the idea of, your birthing point, like this part of your chart, which is very much about the ascendant. The first house really does show us our body, our image, and also about our boundaries, and how confident we are about boundarying, like having boundaries. How confident are you to have boundaries? And how confident are you in terms of your body? Like, is your body up to the job of being you? Are you flexible enough? Are you somebody who has enough energy to be able to go the distance? Have you got a short-term amount of energy so you can kind of like rally into something? Or have you got more of a marathon style of energy? I think energy sources are really, really important with the first house, especially when you've got something energetic like Uranus going through it, because Uranus really, I think, looks at your electrical systems, like, how's your electromagnetic energy, how's your auric energy, are you full, are you sustaining, are you connected into things? So I think all of these connections, Uranus does, like, Uranus has a lot to do with frequency and vibration. So I think everything to do with frequency and vibration here is absolutely beneficial to you if you're tuning into the right kinds of frequency and vibration. So what occurs to me, as Uranus goes through this part of your chart, sometimes it shows where you go through a big dip or a big change in the way you're using your body, or that you have this shock that later shows you, actually, maybe I was going down the wrong path. Maybe I need to take a bit better care of myself. Maybe I need to have a bit more flexibility in my body. Maybe I need a few more open spaces for myself. It's also about your persona. Like, what is your persona about? And how much freedom do you have to be yourself? Uranus going through here is absolutely transforming in terms of how people see you and view you. The inner rebel comes out during this time. People get very rebellious when they have Uranus coming into this part of the chart. They want a lot more autonomy, a lot more freedom, and they'll fight a lot more for for it or absolutely distance themselves to get it. And so I would imagine that every time Mars has connected with Uranus in your first house, that it could very well have been quite shocking in terms of, how you're using your body, and also how you're putting space between you and other people. It's also a time when you want to soar forwards really fast, like really move forwards in a very, very dynamic way, and you don't want anyone to restrict you. So anything that feels restrictive needs loosening. Now, you've had a couple of goes at this, in January 2021 and in August of 2022. Now it's 2024. It's the last one in this first house. The next time it comes around, it is coming into your second house. Now, the second house has a lot to do with your income and your self-esteem. So whatever you're working out for yourself right now, whatever you are working at in terms of your feelings of freedom and space and possibility for yourself, you want to do a good job of it. Because, when Uranus comes around to this part of the chart, it can get quite difficult. If you've already built yourself up and given you enough space to be your freaky, original, authentic, integral self, the more likely you are to have a better self-esteem, the more likely you are to receive resources and manage your money better. But if you're still reeling from Uranus coming through this first house, and maybe you've been resistant to experiencing change and following what is really in your heart, crying out saying, I need freedom, I need something for me. If you haven't given yourself that space, it's not setting yourself up very well for a better sense of income. If you've trapped yourself in this really difficult job, it's going to be difficult. So with this one, this almost feels like a last ditch attempt to get independence, to get more independent, to get a feeling of greater freedom and possibility. Of course, that's not actually true. It's not your last opportunity. There's going to be plenty. But the way all the planets are aggregating and connecting right now, this is a very strong time. So if you do have a goal for yourself to create a greater sense of authenticity and space for you, now is the time to take it. So I hope that was helpful. Basically, don't underestimate what you can do. Don't be afraid to take risks. Remember what you've learned and allow yourself to really develop your talents and skills. Be the ingenious person that you are. So there you go. Okay, so Gemini ascendant. So this is a look at where Mars and Uranus have connected in your chart. Since Uranus has been in the sign of Taurus. So, the first time you had this particular conjunction in the sign of Taurus in your lifetime, it would have been in your 12th house with this whole sign charting method. So the 12th house is about your unconscious mind. Now, having Uranus going through your 12th house will most likely have brought up a lot of I would say deep questions about the nature of the universe, the nature of your life, like what's the purpose of it. I imagine you've done a lot of soul searching from this time, and it may well have been because of deep shocks. There will have been shocks that have come up, and it's usually a big shock and a change that is the thing that gets us thinking about the purpose of life. Uranus has so much to do with our purpose, our inner purpose, what we've been ignoring, what we've been hiding under the carpet, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. You cannot ignore it anymore, and that's really what happens when Uranus is doing stuff in the 12th house. It can be quite painful and surprising. Now, when Mars comes in as well, you cannot hide from what's going on in your unconscious mind. Stuff comes up, maybe memories from the past or from childhood, things that have upset you. You may find like the 12th house also is known for hidden enemies, for things coming up to surprise you that you maybe sensed was there but couldn't fully articulate it or couldn't fully understand it, like these old patterns that come up and they take you by surprise. So I imagine that these times would have been quite strong for you. And I wonder what was going on in January 2021 for you and in August 2022. Now it's July 2024. And again, whatever is shocking going on in your unconscious mind, most likely it relates to something in the past. the 12th house is absolutely about the secrets of the past, the stuff that happened in your unconsciousness that is locked there, and Uranus and Mars really opens it up. So if you're particularly shocked right now, and it will look very, very compelling that the reason you're shocked is because of what's going on right now in your life and on planet Earth. But actually, you might find that some of what is so deeply shocking is coming from an earlier event, a much earlier event. And so what might be useful in this very last Mars and Uranus conjunction is to ask yourself, okay, what does this remind me of? What does this feeling, this surprising, shocking, deeply conscious moment in time, what is it reminding me of? When did I first feel like this? And follow that train of thought, really get to it. Really, keep asking yourself, so you might come up with an idea and then you say, and what does that mean? And what did I make it mean? And what did that do? And what did that create in me? What were the costs of that belief system? The more you ask yourself these questions, the more is coming up. So this is a real sort of like deep opening time where everything that's been locked away can come out. It is given a voice. It's like those hidden aspects of you have a voice, and they might also have this real deep ingenuity. They might actually point at your skills and talents, the things that you've locked away, the things that maybe you're a bit embarrassed by. They might actually be the key, the surprising key to what you're meant to be doing. So when these things are coming up, find out as much as you can about them. You also want to ask yourself about talents and skills, like, have I got a talent in this? A lot of people come into psychic energy, channeling energy, a sudden inspiration that comes up and you're like, wow, I've always known that, but how did I forget about that? So we are coming into this new awareness all the time. Also ask yourself how you've been underestimating yourself and what are you actually capable of? Because this is a time to be completely, in your ingenuity. Final thought, like the next time Mars and Uranus come together, they are going to be in your first house. And the first house is obviously about your body. It's about your persona, about your particular brand, how people experience you. And we tend to go through these really big shifts when Uranus comes into the first house. Unless you live to be over 84, you might not even have Uranus going through your first house. This isn't something that happens to everyone, but when it does go through the first, it usually creates a really big shift in who you are. So I really think that this particular conjunction can open up, a last hidden remnant of something that could be even a point of self-sabotage. Don't be afraid to explore it, because you could be freeing yourself up to create some really enormous change in 2026 that you can just walk yourself through. So yeah, really listen to your unconscious mind and what it's sharing with you right now, and hopefully it will see you through onto a safe and beautiful path. Okay, so Cancer, what does this series of conjunctions between Mars and Uranus mean to you? Like the one that we're talking about right now is taking place at 26 degrees in the sign of Taurus. So Uranus and Mars are in a conjunction, and it's highlighting this part of your chart. But the truth is, this pattern has come up twice before. Uranus and Mars came together on January the 20th in 21. And then on the 1st of August in 2022, if you think back, what were you doing around that time, like a week before and a week after of each of those times? What new ideas were coming up for you? What new consciousness ideas? And I would say what new friendships were coming up? Because this is all activating your 11th house, which has to do with networks, professional networks, a feeling of a tribe. It might be a political association, especially given that particular date was actually the date of Joe Biden's inauguration as the 46th president of the United States. So that was a particularly strong one, which could have created a lot of feeling within you. The 11th house is like, where do we feel our tribe? Where do we feel like we fit into the overall vision? Do we have a vision that we're co-creating with other people? Do we have a joint sense of working towards something? I think the 5th and the 11th houses are absolutely about our creativity. This one is about the creativity of our own passion and where it's leading us. This is our own self-creation. This in the 11th house is our co-creation. So think back, how were you developing your skills and talents around January of 2021, and your friendships in particular that might have led your life on in a really surprising and new way? You might also ask yourself, what were you doing around the end of summer of 2022? And how were your friendships and connections leading you further on in your life? Now, I say leading you further on, like Uranus and Mars can be very, very helpful and productive if you've got new ideas. It can also be very shocking. Shocking events can also take place because Mars is dynamic and moving, and Uranus is electric, but it's also consciousness and change and innovation. But it can also be, I'm stopping this, I'm starting that. So you may have also experienced very deep moving times around these dates as well. So it's worth bearing in mind what shocking events were going on as well. So that brings me to where we are right now. So there is this third occurrence of this connection, based on what you've already learned, and what you've been working on. How can your talents and skills develop further? What risks have you taken in the last 4 years or so? How has your life got riskier? Have you underestimated yourself? Have you relied on your new friends in such a way that you have trusted yourself less and less and less? Mars and Uranus does bring you back into your sovereign state. You become a lot more self-directed and a lot more interested in finding your own truth rather than a collective truth. You may even find that you're falling out with your collective vision, the vision that you maybe have really bought into. Now you might be taking a step back from, it might not fit you as well as it did. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of change. The next one that's coming up in 2026 is absolutely taking place in your 12th house. And that is a place where it's really creating a change at an unconscious level. So what I would say in preparation for that is really try and bring up your learning into your conscious mind right now. If you think there is something that is bugging you, ask yourself a few of these questions, because wherever you've got something that doesn't quite feel right, it's like a clue. It's almost like your unconscious mind is priming you just to dig that little bit deeper. All of your wealth is in that hidden part of your mind. And this could be the thing that has the information about your talents and skills. So don't be afraid to dig deeper. It's when you dig deep, it is the thing that is giving you your kind of new skill upgrades. So yeah, follow your intuition. Don't be afraid to be ingenious at this moment in time, and allow, all of your new ideas, give them a chance to be voiced and felt and heard, and just see where they go. So I hope that's helpful for you. So Leo ascendant then. Hi, Leo ascendant. So I'm looking at the Mars and Uranus connections, the conjunctions between Mars and Uranus. Right now, they are at 26 degrees in the sign of Taurus. However, they have been in the sign of Taurus for the last 4 years. So they first connected in the sign of Taurus on the inauguration day of January 20th, 2021 at 6 degrees in the sign of Taurus. Now, I don't know what was going on at that time for you and how it felt it was affecting you in your life. The 10th house, where this is sitting in your chart, is absolutely about your legacy, your maturity, how you stand in the world. It's how you make sense of the world and how you step out, how you rise in it. The 10th house is known as that place of career. It's known as vocation. It's known as your reputation. And also how you get rewarded, how people celebrate you. The 10th house is supposed to be a place of culmination. And often when people have Uranus and Mars here right at the top, that first conjunction in their 10th house can be really, really surprising. It can lift you up very, very shockingly and very, very quickly. And you can get very well known very quickly as well with that particular conjunction. In particular, it can be shocking for all the wrong reasons. Like you might find that your reputation gets out of control, or sudden things happen, and then it creates a sudden chain of events that happens in terms of your career. So it's all change, and it can be a little bit difficult to manage. I wonder how you have managed it since January of 2021, and what you have learnt since. And then you might also want to consider what was going on at the end of July and until mid-August of 2022. What were you learning there? What was inflaming in terms of your career and your reputation? Did you use that information, those ideas, to develop something new for you? And of course, now we're in 2024, so it doesn't have to be quite as shocking this time. Like, you've done this a couple of times before. If you've got a new idea now, you don't have to shock everyone around you to do it. You can give yourself the freedom. I mean, this is another thing that comes up. Uranus is a planet of freedom and independence, and wanting to do things your own way with your own independence, like not taking other people's ideas. It's your idea. So you might have found that actually in these last few years, you've actually got quite stubborn about what is known about you, what you're putting out there, what has your name on it. And you might have become very resistant. You may well have found that it's pissed off a lot of people. You might actually be successful, but not really connected to people. Who knows what your really strong drive for independence and sovereignty in terms of how you are seen and viewed, and how you step into the world, and how you monitor your life. Who knows how that is experienced? So this third go, I really see that you can use your ingenuity and your talent and skills in a whole new way, without it having to be quite as shocking as it has been before. In particular, there's some very useful planets lining up, like Pluto and Saturn and Mercury are all really working to help you. There's also the Saturn and Jupiter square that's coming in right now at this moment in time, at this seed point, so that any new innovative ideas now, they have to actually be done in quite a rational and sensible way. You can't just like charge on ahead. Actually now you do have to put a little bit of planning in. But if you were to do something in your career right now and really plan it well, it's likely to go very, very well. So, to sign off on this mini reading, what I would say is, what have you learned about how you've underestimated yourself? Have you gone beyond what you were expecting before? If your career has actually become quite disastrous in the last few years, what have you learned from that? It won't have been completely disastrous because you're not up to the job. It would have been just because with the new frequency of wanting a bit more independence has come in and turned your life upside down in some ways. Where you've accepted your own need for your own independence, you will have probably directed your job changes and your career changes very, very consciously. But if you've really needed freedom but not been able to face it, you might have found that somebody sacked you or let you go or something like that. This moment in time of Uranus and Mars being up here is really to ask you to take control, to fully embrace the control in your life, that you really do have everything that you need to be able to make your mark, to be able to survive. So, don't underestimate yourself. Really believe in your ingenuity. Those ideas are coming up for a reason. And know what risks you can take. What have you learned from the risks you've taken so far, so that you know how far you can push it. And then maybe when you want to retreat a little bit and balance it out. Suffice to say, it will move into the sign of Gemini in 2026. So what I would say is whatever you're working on right now will end up being a very collaborative thing. So put in some plans for that. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to it. Have fun. Virgo ascendant, how are you doing in terms of the whole idea of this Mars and Uranus conjunction? So these conjunctions don't come around every day. They come around just below every 2 years. And when they come up repeatedly in the same sign. So, this one that we've got, this Mars and Uranus conjunction, is in the sign of Taurus at 26 degrees, very much here in your chart. Now, it's not the first time you've experienced this energy in this part of your chart. Before, it would have happened here on the January the 20th, 2021, and then it would have come up again around the 1st of August, 2022. Now, you don't have to look directly at those dates. You could consider, a week or two before and a week or two after, because the energies are still very prominent. So you might consider, what was coming up for me to do with my ninth house. Now, your ninth house is about what you know, your beliefs, your philosophies, your politics, your ideas on morality really come up at that time, but also your need to feel free, your need to feel like you're on an adventure, your need to explore the world, your need to explore other cultures. There's a real restlessness about the ninth house that makes you want to expand your vision. Hence why politics, religion, spirituality often become this really big force in our life during this time. You might have also decided that as you've been raising your game, that actually you've been broadcasting, you've been writing, you've been blogging, you've been podcasting, all those kinds of things, because they're very much about sharing knowledge, and sharing views and opening discussions, which are all ninth house things. This is about a sharing and about an understanding and really trying to broaden, really, really strong. So this particular one, at this particular degree, it refers to a Sabian symbol, which has to do with not underestimating yourself, but also developing your talents and skills. And Uranus, you can say it so many different ways. Uranus is also about your ingenuity, how innovative and how idealistic, inventive, and creative you are. It's also a great channel. It really helps us have these ideas that come to us out of the blue. And Mars is about us taking action. So you may very well have noticed that when you're feeling freer, when you've expanded your vision and broadened your sense of the world and its possibilities, you may have found that you've connected into talents and skills. I would ask, what was going on around this time? And it might have been a shock decision that you needed more freedom. It might have been a shock decision. I need to leave. I need to move. I need to change somehow. You might have found the same in August of 2022. But this third occurrence, this is the one that I think we can have a long-term success with. It's got a really good, strong astrological makeup. The weather for it this time is very strong. The Mars and Uranus conjunction are connected helpfully to Pluto and Saturn. It's also connected to Mercury, which is really enabling us to access our thoughts at a very, very deep, deep level. So whatever ideas you're coming up with right now that give you freedom and space to make your own mind up, these are the things that are leading you forwards on your adventure and forwards to broaden your horizons. The next time these two come together, they'll be coming together in your 10th house, which is an invitation for you to really shake up your career and your direction, almost like your karmic direction, your destiny, you could say, your legacy. So I really do think the more you put into this particular Uranus and Mars cycle, the more likely you are to line yourself up to a much more authentic path for yourself in your future career. So there you go, Virgo ascendant. I hope that was helpful to you. Okay, so Libra ascendant, this one's for you. So I'm talking here about the Mars and Uranus conjunction that is happening right now at 26 degrees in the sign of Taurus. Now, a lot of people have been very doom and gloom about this, and yet every aspect can be seen in such different ways. So what I really wanted to do was explore how you can use the energy of Mars and Uranus in your life and also recognize where you've already been using it. This isn't the first time you've had Mars and Uranus going through this part of your chart. In January of 2021, it was going through this part of your chart. In August of 2022, it was going through this part of your chart. It is an energy that really helps you to see how you've been underestimating yourself. It also shows you where you've been taking really big risks and also getting to see the cost of those risks. And it's a time of intense learning, especially in this 8th house, which is what has been highlighted during each of these successive conjunctions. So we've got the energy of innovation, surprise, consciousness, change, kind of itchy feet, which is very much a Uranus thing, and it brings a hell of a lot of consciousness and spirituality to us. And also Mars, Mars is that need to take action, that need to make a difference, that need to innovate and change something that is not working in our lives. So, what occurs to me is, what have you been changing in terms of the sometimes hidden, there's sometimes family patterns. Like the 8th house has a lot to do with the generations. It has a lot to do with family secrets. It has a lot to do with the family jewels. And by that could mean your partner's nether regions, because the 8th house has a lot to do with sex and sensuality, and all sorts of sordidness around intimacy, like intimacy on steroids. The 8th house seems to bring up a lot of deep trust issues, and also things that have to do with other people's value systems. So, like the 2nd house here is about your value systems and your money. And up here, it brings up everyone else's money, including, again, the family jewels, but in a different way. The family money, the inheritances, your partner's tax, your shares, stocks and shares and things like that, properties that you own, your pension plans, the taxes that you still have to pay that you've got out of control with. It's also very much about borrowing money, it's other people's values. And so Mars and Uranus here can really bring up some big trauma around this. Like one of the trauma houses, I would say, the 4th and the 8th and the 12th really seem to be houses where we have a lot of emotional and psychological trauma. The 8th house is very much about family and generational stuff. It is, I think of it as a house of clearing. This is a place where we go to clear our trauma and to understand it. So having Uranus going through this can be quite an unsettling period in time, where you are, where it really suddenly comes up in your face, where difficulties with people come up, where you become aware of other people's very different value systems and you're trying to make sense of it. So Uranus can bring up splits, changes in who you're talking to and how you're talking to them. It can bring up shocking information to do with other people. And of course, when Mars comes in as well, it can bring up moments of aggression, moments of also deep, rampant sexuality, but also it just brings up a movement. Wherever you feel psychologically moved to explore your life, Mars comes in and it's like, okay, we're done here. Let's change this. So you might want to consider what was going on. What were you changing back in January of 21 and August 22? And what have you learned from those changes? Were they sudden? Did you deal with them gracefully? What did you learn from them? You might also ask yourself, where did I underestimate myself? See, often this time, with Mars and Uranus, we can become a bit arrogant, or we might move a bit too rashly. It's almost like we might be a bit overconfident, because we suddenly make this move. But actually, you might, subsequently underestimate yourself. But I actually think it's a time when you realize the true brilliance of you, just how passionate and moved you can be to create a big change. And so what I would say is, what was brilliant about this time? What did you do really well? How did you cope with change? How did you embrace change? There's a lot to do. This particular degree is associated with creativity, deep levels of mastery, and really amazing skills and talents that maybe you haven't quite, appreciated in yourself. It's almost like your ingeniousness. So I would also say, based on what you've already learned, how can you innovate in your life and bring your natural talents up? Maybe what you've learned actually is this inordinate level of patience, your deep understanding of other people. You may well have been through so much in these last few years that you now realize you've got a talent and skill base that you could actually develop maybe as part of a career, or, this could be a moment to change your direction, and to have the courage to take action on that changed direction. So yeah, this is possibly leading you on to something really quite big. The thing that I want to leave you with, because this is just a little short update, And that is your next Mars and Uranus conjunction is taking place in your 9th house, and it'll be in the sign of Gemini. Now, this one is absolutely designed to crack your life wide open and to bring up this real big sense of possibility, a big open space, a new challenge, a new adventure, one where your philosophies, your spirituality, your religion, whatever it is that takes up so much of your grey matter. It's a time when you're going to be really broadened and deepened in your understanding. So the more you can do to let loose some of this inner psychology, the more you're really setting yourself up for a very deep and insightful change in 2026. So I hope that is helpful for you, just to see that it's not necessarily doom and gloom, that actually what you've been going through could be part of your life plan. So there you go. I hope that's helpful. Right, moving on to Scorpio ascendant then. So for you, Scorpio's ascendants, and I'm one of you, this is for you. So you've had the Mars and Uranus connection going through the sign of Taurus, definitely since 2021, and that's most likely in your 7th house. It's worth considering, if you've got planets around here, if you've got anything in your 7th house, you may well have found that around the time of January 2021, there were some big shifts in your consciousness. And then there were some big further shifts in August of 2022. Mars and Uranus bring up a certain amount of shock. And from that shock, we come up with these new resolves. There are these new ideas on how you want to live your life, and new ideas about the people you want in your life. So I see Mars and Uranus here could absolutely change you if you're in the wrong relationship, or if you've got the wrong friends around you. It could create some very big shifts. You may even have found that during those times you changed your relationships quite fundamentally, or maybe fell out quite a bit. This is really, really challenging in terms of our relationships. However, what I would say is, what have you learned since those last couple of cycles came in? What were you learning about yourself in terms of the amount of freedom you need, in terms of how much independence you need? How did you take responsibility for what you need in your life from the people around you? And how did you underestimate yourself, but also how did you underestimate how much you wanted to receive from other people? Were you happy to, were you all give, but not really take? And that's an underestimation, obviously. Where you're giving of yourself all the time, you're not fully estimating what you need. So really review those times in through the light and learning of your relationships. Now, here's the next thing. Mars and Uranus are deeply innovative, and Mars less so. Like, Mars is just wanting to take action and to be very, very practical and quite strongly self-facing. Like, you absolutely face yourself, you see who you are, and you're quite competitive with yourself. But with Uranus, you're also trying to problem solve. You're also trying to create something new so that you have a feeling of more autonomy, more integrity, more authenticity. And it can be absolutely to do with computers. It can be to do with consciousness, all sorts of different things. There are many ways to solve your issues and to take action in feeling like you've got more integrity and more say over your life. So, you may well have come up with a new business idea to do with serving other people based on what you've been learning. What I really want you to know is this current degree where Mars and Uranus are currently in a conjunction with. So 26 degrees in the sign of Taurus. Now, the Sabian sign, which I learned from Linda Hill, she was talking about them the other day, and you can check it out on her wonderful website, which is sabiansymbols.com. The Sabian symbol for the degree of 26 in the sign of Taurus is to do with your creativity. It's to do with your talents and skills that maybe you've been underestimating in yourself. It is absolutely about seeing your possibilities, seeing your opportunities, seeing your bigger vistas for yourself. And they may well have something to do with other people in your life, the people you want to share in your life, new people coming into your life. So the more you can learn about your relationships with other people these last 2 times, in terms of when you're feeling absolutely your most independent and most rebellious within your relationships, that will give you a much clearer idea on how you want to use this energy this time round. The last thing I want to share with you really is the next one that's coming up, which will be in 2026. I know it's a couple of years off, but these seed points of Uranus and Mars energy, the next one's going to be in the sign of Gemini, and it's going to be touching and reaching into your 8th house. Now, the 8th house is a place where a lot of secrets can exist, and also a lot of resentments and like hidden attitude. It's where guilt and shame and blame and anger can reside. So the more you're bringing your relationships into a place of truth and honesty and freedom and possibility, the more practiced you are in openness right now, the more opportunities you can create for yourself to share more deeply with your partners in the coming years. So I would say, use this particular moment in time to really crack open your relationships in such a way that you're really building a dream life, that you're really creating a foundation of truth, authenticity, and freedom for yourself, so that in the coming years, boy, are you starting to really motor. So there you go. Use your really creative ingenuity right now to really benefit you in your relationships. I hope that's helpful. Hey Sagittarius, how are you doing? So this is your Mars conjunction Uranus mini reading. And in this, I want to talk about the possibilities and the chances and the benefits, actually, of Mars and Uranus coming together. There's a lot about the negatives and not so much about the surprises and the potentially hard work, but the great reveals that come from the kind of innovation and exciting exploratory work that you could be doing with this energy. So this is it. So the first thing to recognize about this energy is this is new. Like every time Mars and Uranus come together, it's a new opportunity for you to take action on your innovation and your need for independence, your need for freedom, your need for space, truth, honesty, and integrity. But this is just the newest version of it. The last 2 times that these conjunctions have happened have already been in the 6th house. So what you're going through right now is not a real surprise or a shock. You're not really necessarily working on something brand new right now. It's a continuation of a theme. And in fact, it's a continuation of a theme that you can actually start to wrap up now. So this is your last go at Mars and Uranus in the sign of Taurus. The next one will be in the sign of Gemini in 2026, and it will be a new theme of innovation and taking action. So the first thing you might want to ask yourself is, well, what is the 6th house about, and how have these conjunctions expressed themselves in my 6th house previously? So again, you might want to think, okay, so Mars is taking action and Uranus is about innovation, creation, space, change, deep change, a craving, and itchy feet kind of, I've got to move because if I don't, I'm going to kind of explode, because both of them together are actually quite explosive. Now, the 6th house has a lot to do with your routines and being normal. Actually, the 6th house is absolutely a place of normality within our charts, or, it shows our attitudes to normality. Are we good at keeping routines? Are we good at managing our work, our finances, our health, our diet? How orderly are we? Are we able to cut the mustard? Can we be a bit disciplined? Can we maybe put pleasure a little bit behind? Let's attend to the real stuff first. So I think with Mars and Uranus going through your 6th house, you've probably had a couple of sticky points where actually you threw your routines out the window, or maybe things were moving so fast in your life, in all aspects of your life, that you had to change your routines quite drastically, shift your routines, shift how you were at home, shift how you were in work and finances, and create a whole new way of being. I really do think these big shifts would have been, really quite disruptive to managing your home and getting your energy right. You might also have felt that you've had to deal with a change in your health. Like the 6th house has a lot to do with your physical health, the 12th more your mental health. Your 6th has a lot to do with your day-to-day health and your energy levels. So you might have had rapidly changing and altering health levels. You might have found that during one of these times, you actually came up with, some real big health difficulties, some challenges that created a different set of expectations, and a real shock, So, did you get back into a routine? Did you have to change your routine? So this is your 3rd go at it. And it doesn't have to be as disastrous or difficult as before. In fact, right now, you've probably got some new innovative ideas. I think whatever is going on in our life really helps us to come up with solutions. Often the greatest of inventors had to really come across some difficulty first, where they realized something wasn't quite right. And then their unconscious mind, whether they were consciously doing it or not, all of a sudden this idea comes up in the minds, because genius usually comes out of necessity. And so, this is your 3rd go at it. And as Mars and Uranus come together this time in your chart, it's highlighting these changes because there's something you want to do about it. Now, given that the 6th house does have something to do with the nature of your work, you might be about to shift the way you're working. Is it your working hours? Is it your patterns? Is it your focus? Are you going to go alone? Of course, if you do that, it's going to change your money. It's probably going to change how you are at home as well. So, don't underestimate this. This could really be quite a significant change. But as such, it's still a seed point. It's just a shot of energy, a shot of potential. It's showing you could do something. At its real weakest, it just might create this sense of frustration at home and itchy feet. And this feeling of, I'm really, really frustrated with all these things I've got to work through and manage. But at its biggest application, it could be that the irritation has actually birthed a whole new idea, a really ingenious idea, a really creative idea, this new impetus to do something new. And that's the whole purpose of Mars and Uranus, from my perspective, is to challenge ourselves, to not to underestimate ourselves, but to rise beyond it, to have the confidence to try something new, to have the energy to try something new, and to actually raise our consciousness to match that. Look at the risks you've taken and what you've learned, but don't underestimate yourself. Use your ingenuity. The next time this happens is going to be in 2026, and it's really opening a space for a new kind of person to come into your life, or for you to change the nature of your existing relationships. So the more you get this part of your life sorted out now, the more exciting this next one is going to be. So I hope that's helpful for you, Sagittarius. If I can be of any help, you know where I am. Lots of love. So Capricorn ascendant, how can I help you with this particular set of conjunctions? Now, I say a set, we're actually only really talking about this one here, which is taking place right now. And you most likely have felt the energies of this coming in for a good week or so. And you'll be feeling the energies of this leaving in about a week or so's time. However, what's really important to bear in mind is that any conjunction between a pair of planets is a seed. It's a birthing point. There is something to do with taking charge and taking action, which is very much a Mars thing, and then consciousness, innovation, change, surprise, chaos, shocks, and like this deep sense of I must change. It's almost like there's an irritation, a friction. Something's not quite right. Something needs to change in terms of your energy and how you're using your energy, which is very much Uranian. So Mars and Uranus together in this seed point. Now, this isn't the first time they've come together in your 5th house. The last two have both been in the sign of Taurus. So, what I'm drawing you back to here, Capricorn, is what was going on for you around, in terms of your consciousness, in terms of how you were taking action because of your consciousness back in January and early Feb of 2021. And what were you doing? What were you changing and innovating about your life around the end of July to mid-August of 2022? You may well have found that, you got your knickers in a twist. You felt this big surge of energy and, things started to change and you probably got quite creative. Maybe you were solving a problem for yourself. Maybe you realized you weren't having enough fun. And so you got into more passion. Maybe you started a relationship at this time. The fifth house has a lot to do with us having fun and feeling passionate. It's very sensuous. It's sexual. It is also about birthing children. It's also about raising children and being playful. It's also about all of our hobbies, all the things we're creating. It could also be this really strong need to create for creation's sake. It's a very, very creative place to have Uranus in. And it's one that often makes us think very, very differently. So you may have found that the way you're thinking actually is really different and really unusual. This is actually a time when it's actually really cool for you to explore how different you really are and to celebrate it and to take action on your unique differences. So think back to those times. What were you creating in those moments? What did you change? What did you learn? And then think about where you are right now. Where have you felt stagnant? Where have you felt pinned in and penned in? Where have you felt like your power of creation has been negated? Where have you felt like you couldn't move freely to be sensuous and sexual? When did you last feel really alive? Because I think the fifth house has a lot to do with feeling alive and feeling joyful. If you're not feeling joyful, then, this Mars and Uranus energy could actually be quite hedonistic, encouraging you to dive into something so that you start to feel again. You may well have taken some risks during these previous Mars and Uranus conjunctions, and you might have actually learned something about the risks that you've taken, about the sudden changes you've made. Maybe they were a bit too sudden. Maybe there are some things that you'd have changed. But suffice to say, this is your third and final go of this energy in the sign of Taurus. So how do you want to play it? How big do you want to live this energy? How much energy do you want to put into it? One thing that I notice is the next one that comes along is going to be in a whole new sign. It's going to be the first, but not the last, in the sign of Gemini. And it's going to be highlighting your sixth house, which has everything to do with the way you live your life. So it's not about your passion so much, but it's about the results of your passion. Maybe you've got kids now. Maybe you set up a hobby that turned into a business and you're now managing that. But when it comes into the sixth house, there will be another moment where you need to innovate and change and create more space for you at home, more space for you at work, more space for you in your finances. So my advice here is live this aspect as big as you can, as big as you dare. If you've got this desire to create something, don't, like, maybe you've got this idea to create an app or to write a book or, I don't know, create a business out of your hobby. Don't just stop there. Maybe raise the bar a little bit. Say, I want to create a series of apps. I want to create a series of books that is going to reach every millennial or everyone in the whole of America, or, set it as big and as wide as you can, because this energy in your fifth house could actually create something really, really big. And where you put limitations on yourself, you may well find that your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, only looks to the edges of the limits you've created. So make it as big as possible. Don't be afraid. Believe in your ingenuity. So there you go, Capricorn. I hope that's helpful. You know where I am if you need a bit of guidance. But anyway, lots of love to you. Aquarius ascendant, then let's have a look at how this might be working for you. So I'm talking about the Mars and Uranus conjunction and the kind of energy that it's likely to bring up in your life. Now, this isn't the first time you've had the Mars and Uranus energy playing off. They come into a conjunction every 2 years, more or less. So it's not a really, really rare aspect. It comes around every couple of years, but there's a key to it. So it comes around in the same sign, like 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5 times in the same sign. This is the last one in the sign of Taurus. You've done it twice before. And so they're part of a set, and they're showing your ongoing learning. What have you been learning so far? So what I want to share with you, first of all, about this energy is, what have you learned previously around January 2020, 21, towards mid-January to the beginning of February? What was going on for you around that time? You might also ask yourself, well, what was going on for me around the end of July towards mid-August of 2022, when Mars and Uranus last came together in the sign of Taurus? Now you've got the third one, and the final one in the sign of Taurus is coming round again. So both of these energies are, Mars is about taking action, and it is very practical. It completes its task before thinking about it. It just like goes headlong into it. It can be a bit aggressive, and it can sometimes really say, I need space. These are my boundaries. And if you push me on this, I'm going to fight back, so it brings up a survival instinct in us. And then Uranus brings up change. And this desire for change, a desire for freedom, a desire for originality, and being our unusual selves. It really brings up our original formula, our original recipe, our original quirks. And it also brings up a very deep need for truth and knowledge and integrity. And it also creates this big sort of channeling energy where we just know things, and it comes into our heads. And so, yours have been going off in your fourth house, and that can be not easy. Having Mars and Uranus coming into your fourth house, the fourth house is your home and your security and your family. Having Uranus going through this part of your chart has probably been quite disabling. It's probably brought in a lot of changes, in particular about where you live or how you live at home or who's in your house with you. And it might even show that the people you're living with are actually quite disruptive, that they're going through a lot of changes, and that has a knock-on effect with you. Now, each time Mars has come into the act and got involved, you've probably found that maybe your home has felt a bit too small and you've had to get out, have a trip, or move suddenly. So cast your mind back there. What were you learning about yourself, and what were you doing? What were you changing in response to how you were feeling in yourself and how secure you were feeling at home? Now, this particular degree, 26 degrees, also has something to do with developing your talents and skills. To reference that, I was talking about it earlier in the show, and referencing Sabian symbols. And you might have noticed I did a show just a couple of days ago with Linda Hill, who wrote a book about Sabian symbols. So I'm referring to her Sabian symbol about the degree of 26 degrees in the sign of Taurus. It's about what we're developing about ourselves, where we maybe have underestimated our skills and talents, and maybe where we're not listening to our genius, maybe where we're letting it go a little bit. And so in particular with this, I would say, what have you learned about needing space and freedom? What have you learned about being your truth at home? And has that brought up an ingenuity? Has it brought up new talents and skills? How is that impacting you and your ongoing flowering, your ongoing blooming, how you are evolving as a person? So I would really think about it. The next time this energy comes together again, it's going to be in the sign of Gemini, and it will have moved on to your fifth house. It would have moved on to a place of acting out your joy, acting out your desire to create more and more, acting out your desire to birth a new period in your life, and possibly get more sensuous and more playful and really, really connect into your passions. And so I think the more you're freeing yourself up in your self-concept and in terms of your responsibilities at home, the more creative you can be. So why not start now? So yeah, to sum up, I would say this energy, yes, it can be deeply disruptive at home. And yet, as you acknowledge how much space you truly need to feel your real self, as you acknowledge who you really are from what you've learned from the people you're sharing your life with, it's actually leading you into creating more passion for yourself. So let these two kind of work together. See what you can create with this seed point of energy to take control and take action, and also allow your consciousness to change the way you're living. Anything is possible. And this is such an important house. This is like a root house. This is where we find our roots. This is where we know we belong. So really this aspect, I think, is quite possibly going to create a big change for you in terms of how you're going to live the rest of your life. So I hope that's helpful, Aquarius Ascendant. Pisces ascendant. How are you? So this is all about the Mars and Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus. Now, right now you could be forgiven for feeling like you want to hide away because it could be really, really disastrous. And sure, these two energies, when they come together, bring about a lot of change. And with that change comes disruption and a change in consciousness, a change in our focus, a change in our attention. And then boom, we might be a bit accidental. We might not be conscious of all these things going on around us. We might be a bit overwhelmed, understandably so. But it's a much bigger aspect than something that needs to just be feared. It could really bring in some great possibilities. And that's what I want to put to you right now. This is essentially a seed point as part of your ongoing journey. The cycle between Mars and Uranus to another Mars and Uranus conjunction to another Mars and Uranus conjunction, well, they happen every couple of years. It's not a rare thing. However, they do come about in sets. So there have been 2 other Mars and Uranus conjunctions in the sign of Taurus, and they've been preparing you for this particular one. What I would say is, what have you been learning consistently? What was coming up for you sort of towards the mid-January to early February of 2021? What was coming up for you at the end of July to mid-August of 2022? They were the times when Mars and Uranus came together in your 3rd house. And, Mars has to do with taking action. It has to do with creating a defense, standing up for yourself, feeling fired up and ready to take practical action. And then Uranus has to do with change, the necessity to follow your consciousness, the desire to stretch yourself, to be unusual, individual, to be independent, and to really push yourself to a completely new place. It also wants us to cut off and maybe start something completely new. Uranus absolutely is about following your own rhythm. And then Mars, when it comes in with Uranus, is about you finding your own pattern and really going off in a whole new direction. So cast your mind back to what was going on in early 2021 and mid 2022. How was your consciousness changing? What changes did you stop and then reroute and start something new? How is your consciousness evolving? Now, this has been going on in your 3rd house for quite some time. And when Uranus goes through the 3rd house, it often creates a lot of chaos in terms of your natural peer group, the people in your neighborhood, the sort of consciousness of your neighborhood. So I would say, how has your neighborhood really changed over the last couple of years? What have you learned? What is the resting point? What's the resting vibration of your neighborhood? How contented and happy are they? Because where things come up in your neighborhood as not feeling that great comes this need for change, a need for innovation. And it could be, I am so born to serve my neighborhood. And now, because I can see how they are, I want to evolve this idea and present this. Or it could be, wow, I see my neighbors, they're really not for me. I now know that I need my consciousness to go somewhere else completely different. So, it can create all sorts of changes within your locality and within the level of interaction you want in that locality. Now, it could also, with Mars and Uranus together, they are kind of riotous, so you might well find, Mars and Uranus coming together in the sign of Taurus is creating a bit of a rioting energy, a feeling of protest, a feeling of dissatisfaction, a feeling of and that in itself might be having a reaction on you. In fact, you might be swept up in it. It might be becoming part of your consciousness too. Now, what I would say is, what have you learned about yourself during these times? What risks have you taken, and have those risks paid off? Have they created a more nourishing life for yourself? Or have they taken away from your ability to enjoy your life? Really have a think about the knock-on effects of them. What did you learn, and what are you still learning? And also, what talents and skills have you developed because of these changes in consciousness? What things have come up in you as an innovation? I think, anytime there's an underlying problem, our unconscious mind is always thinking of new solutions. In particular for you Pisces ascendant guys that are absolutely open sponges, ready to absorb it all. You know, you'd have been coming up with lots of different ideas, solution sorts, and so on and so forth. So, you know, what talents and skills have arisen within you because of what your community has needed? You know, how are you being ingenious right now? Where is your ingenuity? How can you use it? So as you go through your last Mars and Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus, you know, I say, build on what you've already learned. Don't forget it. They were all really valuable lessons. But this latest seed point is actually going to lead you to the place of the home next time round in 2026. It'll be in the sign of Gemini, and it will be really moving you on, moving you to take action about your home, moving you to take action about your family, moving you to take action about where your security is, where your roots really are. So whatever you're doing right now, don't hold back. Like, really listen to it, really learn from it, really think about it. And if you realize you're in the right place, think about how you can harmonize more and create or help people to harmonize in a greater way. Or if you know that this place isn't for you, then you might be thinking, okay, 2026, that could really move me, and start to make your plans. So anyway, I hope that's helpful to you, Pisces ascendant. This can be a really difficult time to feel at home. So anything you can do to feel more at home is absolutely perfect for you. So wishing you a beautiful transit with Mars and Uranus in your third house. Take care. And if I can be of any help, just get in touch. So there you go. They were my forecasts and my quick sort of condensed forecasts for each sign of the zodiac for the Mars and Uranus conjunction. I really do think that these conjunctions are, you know, they do happen in a moment, and, you know, they might last for a few days or a couple of weeks or whatever, according to the planets. But they're not necessarily something that are that finite, that start and then stop. Because I think anything that starts during one of these influences, it has a life of its own, and it goes through its own life cycle, and then it births itself again the next time those two planets come together. So I see this as much more of a bigger cycle, much more of a bigger influence and a trend in your life. And I don't think it has to be really negative. I see that the news and with the happenings of just the last couple of days have been really unsettling and really disturbing to human consciousness, and has absolutely picked up on all the themes of Mars and Uranus coming together. And yet there's something much deeper about Mars and Uranus. There is a deeper level of ingenuity that comes up in human beings when we are shocked to the core, shocked to our blood, and, you know, shocked to our bones. You know, it creates an innovation, it creates a new feeling, a new sensation, and a new need within us. So follow your ingenuity, don't give up, don't underestimate yourself. This is a time when you can absolutely tap into your inner strength. Anyway, lots of love from me to you, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining me today. And if I can be of any help, then just get in touch below. You can see how to connect with me, how to work with me. Just invite me and we'll take it from there. Anyway, lots of love to you. Bye for now.